Okay, I want to explain. I want to explain how this shiur came about. I am a very firm believer in the idea that says in the Gemara that kol haomer davar b'shem omro, hamevi davar b'shem omro. If you say something over in the name of someone you heard it from, mevi geula leolam, you bring geula, you bring redemption to the world. And what I'm saying today is a repeat of a shiur by Rebbetzin, the Rabbanit Racheli Frankel, I heard last week at a Tzohar conference. She was magnificent. I went up to her and I asked her for her permission to give this over in her name. She said, "You don't need my name, you don't need my permission, but I do, as far as I'm concerned." So whatever I say today is originally her material, and is also, if there's any mistake, I say something the wrong way, that it's my error, not hers. And all the slides I will show you, but she did something really cool that I've been to plenty of conferences. The first time I've had this opportunity, the first slide she put up was a QR code. So if you picked up your phone and you clicked on read QR code, and downloaded the entire um, um, PowerPoint, which I thought was really cool. So I said, okay. So I figured, okay, have it instead of looking up at the screen, and to make use of it today. Unlike most of the shiurim I give, I use slides and I use them as a base for something, but it's mostly teaching and talking. Today's going to be a lot of text based. I will translate everything. Most of the texts are in English and Hebrew. Some that are not, I'll translate, and I'll explain to you what the shiur is. Let me just get the main slide up here, the beginning here. Okay, so here we are, Tisha B'Av afternoon. And if you've been paying attention, you'll notice that and I'm sure this first thing you know, that the intensity of the day changes from very intense at night and morning to the early afternoon today, approximately 12:45 at Chatzot Hayom, the middle point of the day, where some of the restrictions are relaxed. We know that we can sit on regular chairs. The parochet that cover the Yom Kodesh and Shul has been put back. And there's a little bit lessening of restrictions, such as you could do, like, if you didn't do dishes before say the Chag, it's called a Mamoid. If you didn't do dishes and you didn't make the beds, now after the Chatzot would be permissible. The strange thing about that, the conundrum, is that it is actually at the midpoint of the day today and into tomorrow that the worst of Tisha B'Av took place. The real burning of the fire, where it really took hold, did the most amount of destruction, was the afternoon of Tisha B'Av and into the 10th. So the question would be, obviously, like, why do it should go the opposite way. We should start sitting on chairs, and then by the end of Tisha B'Av, be sitting on the floor. So the common answer, and I'm sure there are many, the common answer is given, is that once we, the Jewish people, saw that Hashem was taking out his wrath against Eitzim and Avanim, against the wood and the stones, that there was already a form of nechama. It wasn't that the Jewish people were going to be wiped out, but it was going to be the majority of the loss was going to be the physical structure and not us. And that alone was a piece of nechama. And therefore, I think it is very timely to talk about this afternoon, during the time when the worst was happening in Beit HaMikdash, to talk about what I referred to, and she talked about a little bit, was compassion and passion for Yerushalayim. What I mean by the compassion part, so the presentation is pretty much going to be broken down into two parts. Probably 80%, 75% is going to be talking about of what was going on that day. Let's take, when I say that day, I'm saying during what's the first Beit HaMikdash, second Beit HaMikdash, the destruction, the day of Tisha B'Av. I'm going to see a little introduction to it. We're going to talk about some various things from Chazal that we will talk about, Chachamim Zichronam Libracha. And there are a couple slides I'm going to skip because they are not mativ for today, not only because it's Tisha B'Av, but because the fact that you can't learn Torah that's not directly related to certain subjects, there were certain slides that I will not use. So let's get started. So we start off, of course, Shalom, Shalom, Yerushalayim, Yishlayu Avayich, nice little slide entrance. Okay, so let's start with the Mishnah in the Masechet Ta'anit that talks about both Shiva Serba Tammuz and talks about Tisha B'Av. And I'm just going to translate some of it because right now we don't need to have everything. There are 5 things that happened on the 17th of Tammuz, which of course was 3 weeks ago. And 5 things that occurred on Tisha B'Av. ישבע בשר בתמוז, נשתברו הלוחות, ובטל התמיד, הובקע העיר, שרף אפוסטומוס את התורה, והעמיד צלם ההיכל. So on the 17th of Tammuz, a whole bunch of things happened. One was the daily sacrifice. I'm mentioning this one specifically because it's going to come up now. The daily sacrifice, one that was brought in the morning, one that was brought late in the afternoon, stopped. The city, the breach of the wall, Apostomus burned the Sefer Torah, and at Tselem, an idol was placed into the Beit HaMikdash. On the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, Nigzar Avotenu Sheli Kansulat. So the main original, the patient zero, so to speak, was the Miraglim coming back from the checking out, spying out the land of Israel, giving a bad report, and Bnei Israel crying for no reason. They were probably crying because they heard Iran was going to attack, and they were like, "Where are they already?" And they cried, and it was Nigzar the Bnei Israel that generation, with few exceptions, would not enter the land of Israel. What else happened? Charavat Abayta Barishona Uvashnia, the first and second Beit HaMikdash were destroyed on Tisha B'Av. Nilkeda Beitar. So the city of Beitar was captured. This had to do with after the destruction of Beit HaMikdash, about the year 130 approximately, where there was a final revolt against the Romans, led by Bar Kochva, also known as Bar Koziva. Rabbi Akiva thought that he was the Mashiach, unfortunately, and this terrible battle took place in Beitar, and thousands were killed. And the city of Yerushalayim was plowed under, which was the coming to fruition of a nevuah. And then it ends up, Misha nichnas av mima'atim b'simcha. When you enter Av, you reduce your joy. There's a woman, there's Goldberg. I don't know her. I did a little background check. Fascinating individual. She speaks a lot. She teaches in various Batei Midrash. And she wrote a piece about this Mishnah. I'm going to start with reading some of the Ivri, some of the Hebrew, and then we're going to go have it in English also. So I'll read part of it in Hebrew in her original, and then move on. What she does here is to describe what is really happening in this Mishnah. There's like this. As I read it was just, okay, 5 things happened on the 17th of Tammuz, and 5 things happened on Tisha B'Av, very sterile, very nice. But there's something in that an undertone here that comes up. What's happening is it's really describing the crumbling of the house and the crumbling of values. So she's now going to put this into human terms. Picture a home. Picture someone's home. That when the wall of the city of Yerushalayim was breached, it's like the breaking of the walls of the home. What protects you in your home? Wherever you're in an apartment or you're in a house, wherever you are, what's the first line of protection? You have your walls. You have your door, you have your windows, but you have walls around you. And the initial breach of the wall in Yerushalayim on Shivav Sabat Tammuz was the equivalent of someone busting down one of your walls of your home, the main protection that you have. Shvirat HaLuchot u'Srefat HaTorah, the breaking of the Luchot, the burning of the Torah, Hein Kriyat HaShchatat Shtarei HaErosin VeHaKtuba. Beautiful line, she says. Some of you may know, but on Shavuot, there's a custom among Sfaradim, especially the Moroccan community, that when they're about to take out the Torah, there is a ketubah that is read, just like at a wedding. The ketubah between Hashem and Bnei Yisrael, about over the Torah and Am Yisrael. And it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. She borrows that imagery in a sense and says that when the Sefer Torah was burned and the Luchot were broken, that in a sense was Hashem tearing up the ketubah, this marriage document between Bnei Yisrael and Hashem. Bitula Tamid, how does this fit into our understanding relative to the home? Bitula Tamid Ovdana Kviut. What happens by the time when they stopped bringing the Korban Tamid, it was the equivalent in that our daily lives, we didn't have kviut. We didn't have a sense of repetition, of being able to, okay, I know we're going to have breakfast, we're going to have lunch, we're going to have dinner. Imagine for a moment, go back. It's not that long ago, but thankfully we have to think far back to the beginning of Corona, the first few days. I'm a person personally, I am a very long-term planner, short-term and especially long-term. And I always like to know what's coming up. I like to know what's happening in 6 months, a year, 4 years from now. I don't worry, don't ask. So for people like me, the beginning of Corona was devastating on so many ways, not just the isolation. That wasn't so bad at the beginning, but the not knowing what's going to be the next day. Is this going to be a month? Is it going to be 2 weeks? Who knew how long it was going to be? So this idea of having a routine was completely shattered. And he says that she said that this bitul tamim was the shattering of your daily routine in your home. Hayom yomiut shel hashigra brucha shebetocha ברוח פיוס נמחלים העוונות ונסלח לך על דת ישראל, ועל כל פשעים תכסה אהבה השורה בבית. This idea of what was the purpose of the Korban Tamid? It was number one, it was a feeling of shigra. It was a routine, a daily routine. It also, the Beit HaMikdash led itself to the idea of the forgiving of the sins of Bnei Israel, that the house of the Beit HaMikdash would, so to speak, cover up the sin because they would be forgiven. Imagine for a moment you have a couple, a married couple, and things aren't going well. And as time goes by, there's this, you all will understand this. I used this the other day in a different class. A Berlin Wall comes down between. Something's there, a break. Something's blocking. This tzelem, this pesel, this idol that was placed in the Beit HaMikdash was an imitation or a representation of a lack of transparency. No longer can the husband and wife be intimate with each other, talking about no, just a regular couple, not one that's having trouble. They can't, it's a wall has come up between the two of them. Mikdash HaMitporer, the Beit HaMikdash that's starting to crumble, mi bifnim, from inside. Is also referring to and talking about the internal mishkan, the internal tabernacle that's falling apart. The galut takes Bnei Israel on a long journey. Etc. Let me just go to the end here. She says, the exile takes the people of Israel on a long journey of heartbreak and longing, within which its prayer serves as a hidden refuge, where one can taste something of the lost inner homeliness, not homeliness. And in fact, this is a prayer that always strives for repair and return to this homeliness. What is she saying? I thought it also brilliant. What do we have today? One of the many reasons for some of you participate, I give a weekly shiur Sunday night in Tila. We've been going for a number of months, of course. And we talked about this, like, we don't have a Beit HaMikdash. So our Beit Knesset, our Tefillot, our representation, it's a Mikdash Me'at, it's a small representation of Beit HaMikdash. What is it we're trying to accomplish, though, with that? Is trying to reach that inner homey feeling. In other words, the Beit HaMikdash was our home. Rav Shagar, who died at a very young age, I think he was in his 50s, published many svarim, and he said, I have a note here, he said that the loss of the Beit HaMikdash was not only the loss of the Bayit, was not only the loss of the home, but also the Beitiyut, also the hominess, the feeling of having a home. They say that after the end of World War II, what happened at the end of World War II? So the Italians went back to Italy, the British went back to England, the Americans went back to America. Where'd the Jews go? There was no home. There was no Poland. There was no Hungary. There was no home for them to go back to. They were a place, people without a state. Literally, legally, they were stateless people in many, not every single case. Their home was gone, their physical home, their spiritual home. And this is the feeling she's trying to get us to, that's being evoked in this particular Mishnah. Of it's not just, okay, these things happened on these dates, but it was a process of the crumbling of the Beit HaMikdash from within. It's an amazing Zohar. Again, I'm going to read part of it in Aramaic and part of it in English. We'll see. I'll go back and forth, but most will be in English. The Zohar is a Zohar on Megillat Eicha, which was read last night by Ashkenazim and read last night and today by Sfaradim. I put that in there because people need to understand the difference. People are not aware of differences in minhagim. It's good to know. Anyways, we are like orphans without father and mother. And what do? We start to look we start to look for the mother in the house. We look, but it's destroyed. And we can't find her. Who's the her we're searching for in this midrash we're going to go through? The Shekhinah. The Shekhinah that's in the Beit HaMikdash. If you remember, the end of Sefer Shemot ends with the building of the Mishkan. Very next pasuk, beginning of Vayikra, Hashem Shekhinah enters. It's actually at the end, and then Hashem calls to Moshe to come into the Mishkan. Same thing happens in Bayit Sheni. The Mishkan fills the Beit HaMikdash. It does not happen in the Bayit Sheni, but the Shekhinah is the representation, the manifestation of Hashem's presence in the Beit HaMikdash. And it says, Lo ashkachan. She's not found. Tavat yankalam bechol yoma. Every day she would nurse us. Yomin kadmain in earlier days. Mishapiu dila v'havet nichamalan umemalelet alibana ki ima livra. What would this Shekhinah does? In this case, it's talking about a mother. We're talking about the Shekhinah. What would she do? She would nurse us every day in the early days from her choicest abundance, and she would comfort us and speak to our hearts like a mother to her son. And now our eyes look to every side. The place of our mother's dwelling has been confused, and behold, it is destroyed. We beat our heads against the walls of her house and dwelling. Who will comfort us? Who will speak to our hearts? Who will defend us before the king? It's going to the midrash is going to continue, but just to kind of we should understand what's going on here. Again, I want to stress: here we are, Tisha B'Av afternoon, and we're looking now backwards at the first time we're, so to speak, leaving the Beit HaMikdash, going out, where the bad guys are coming in, and things are happening. The midrash describes us looking for our mother. The mother who nursed us, the mother who comforted us. She's not there. And who's going to protect us now and defend us before the king? What does that mean? Let's take a look. When we would sin before the Father, meaning Hashem. Now, don't forget, Hashem and Shekhinah are the same thing. But right now we're talking anthropomorphically as to the, in Zohar, in the Kabbalah, it's referred to as the feminine side of God. Again, Hashem doesn't have a feminine side, a masculine side, but these are terms we're using that we're using now. We would sin before Hashem, before Father. And he would take out the strap to hit us. She would stand before us. And she would take the brunt of the hit. In order to protect us. It says in the pasuk, and now, Ima Letlan, now mother's not here. Vai, oh, woe is to us. Vailan, Vailacho, Lan Yaot Lemivke, Lan Yaot Lemispe, Lan Yaot Lepatra Inun Milin de Mariru, Loda Lahu, the Inun de Adain, Lemivke Milin de Hespeda. I have to read the Aramaic because it's so beautiful. Woe to us, woe to you. It is fitting for us to weep. It is fitting for us to lament. It is fitting to us to explain these bitter words in the book of Eicha, to make them known to those who know how to weep, the words of the eulogy. He's saying, we don't just sit on the floor and read the Eicha. Remember, this is a midrash on Eicha. We don't just sit on the floor and just read stam words. It's not just, reading another Sefer in Tanakh. We have a reason to be sitting on the floor. We have a reason to cry. So we approach now, he talks now, the midrash, the midrash talks now of an individual who's lost. The Beit HaMikdash has been destroyed, enters this area. What happens? We approach our mother's bed every day. We don't find her there. We ask for her. And there's no one who's there to look at us, didn't pay attention to us. We ask her bed, and it's confused. It says we ask her bed. Look at the midrash is saying that we who are so overwrought with sadness, we talk to what is left behind by the mother, by the Shekhinah. We ask the bed. The bed's confused. Nishala kursaya. We ask her chair. Nafalt. It fell. Nishala hechalindila. And we ask her palaces. Oman inu dalad yadina mina. They know nothing of her, they swear. Nishala afra. We even ask the dust. Reshimu de ikveta letaman. And even the footsteps, the trace of her footprints or footsteps are not even in the dust. Again, it's giving us this horrific picture of this child seeking its mother, this comforting, the only comfort that this child can find in this tragic time. And not only is she not there, there isn't the trace left. The Shekhinah has left. I'm going to read this, go down to English. We ask the roof, and behold, the roof replies to us that she sits there weeping and wailing over us, and goes from roof to roof. This is based also on another midrash, by the way. Weeping and crying out in a bitter voice over us. We ask the roads and the paths, and they all say they heard a bitter voice of weeping that cries over her children, and they do not know where she has gone. This is saying in an anthropomorphic sense, the Shekhinah, the divine presence himself, is crying over the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. It is not just us sitting in the shul this morning, sitting at home today, sitting by the Kotel the next hour or so, and the NCSY and the OU and many other organizations are going to have thousands of people sitting there singing songs in advance of the end of the fast. But it's Hashem himself. It is fitting for us to weep. It is fitting for us to lament. Let us kiss the dust of her feet. Let us kiss the palace of her dwelling. Kiss the walls of the sanctuary. Let us weep bitterly. By saying Eicha, by thinking about Beit HaMikdash, by yearning for, which we will see later, that itself acts as a bit of a nechama. It allows us to connect a little bit. We'll begin the lamentation because we see so much every day. We will weep always, and the bitterness of the weeping will not be forgotten from us. We tend to think, I was about to reach for a glass of water, which isn't there. Great. Well, okay, here. We tend to think of history, and especially this time period, the destruction of Beit HaMikdash, in a very narrow window. The bad guys come into Yerushalayim, they bust the walls, they destroy Beit HaMikdash. Truth is that it's over a period of many years before that happens that things are already starting to go down the tubes. And the going down the tubes is not necessarily from the Romans. It's not from the Greeks. It's not from the ones who wanted to destroy us. Not the Babylonians. It's us. We have our own internal problems, as we know, whether it was the first Beit HaMikdash, whether it was the three big Averot, the three big sins that caused the destruction, or it was the second Beit HaMikdash, where it was sinat chinam, baseless hatred. But there are so many other things that were happening even before that. This Gemara in Yoma describes as seen, and again, usually you don't learn certain parts of the Gemara. Most of the Gemara you don't learn on Tisha B'Av, but because this is very specific and pointed to the Churban, you're allowed to learn anything that has to do with Churban, to the destruction. I have this here. She has this here. I can read it. 40 years before destruction of Beit HaMikdash, there were a few things that were starting to happen that the Jews got an inkling that maybe not everything is okay. Number one, we know that on Yom Kippur, that there was a magnificent ceremony that took place, more than one, that we can only literally dream about right now and only daven in Yom Kippur and say in the Avodah in the afternoon that we say in Musaf, describing the Kohen Gadol's actions on Yom Kippur. One of those things he did was he had two lotteries, two stones that were identical. One had the name, the word La Hashem on one, Lamed with Shem Hashem, and the other one said La Azazel, which meant to go into the valley, into the wilderness, and there would be two goats in front of him, and there would be a kalpi. There'd be a little thing that would put them in, and he'd pick out one and the other, and one would be the Hashem that would determine that whichever goat had the Hashem would be the one that went to be the korban. The other one would be taken by an ish iti, a person who was set to go and take that into the desert and push it over the cliff. And says that for the last 40 years before the destruction of Beit HaMikdash, not one time did the Kohen Gadol raise the one that said Lashem in his right hand. Not once. Because the right hand has primacy. Whether you're lefty, if you're lefty, sorry, world isn't fair. What can I say? But that's one siman. The second siman, even more so, more telling, was we know that there was a thread that was placed, that was red on the Beit HaMikdash itself, and part of it on the horns of the head of the scapegoat. That's where we get the term scapegoat, by the way. It's called the scapegoat. And that was pushed over the cliff. And when the Hashem forgave the Bnei Israel, it turned from red to white. But for the last 40 years before Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, that last 40 years never turned white. What was happening also, it gives us a picture of something that is, we say these words, oh, it was destroyed, it was fired, but we don't really necessarily feel it until this year. This year is definitely different feeling because of October 7th, which I tried to avoid as much as possible today. But it's there. It's very palpable. What happened was all of a sudden, the doors of the Beit HaMikdash, which is also hard for us to picture, but they actually had doors. They were closed at night, and they'd be open first thing in the morning. The doors all of a sudden were opening by themselves. Open, close, open, close. Until one of my heroes, as those of you who take the history class know, until Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai went over to it and there's no real good word for ga'ar bahem in English, but like chastise them. Amaylo. So Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai said to the doors, Eichal, Eichal, sanctuary, sanctuary. Why are you causing problems? Why are you doing this? In other words, the Beit HaMikdash as a building had an inclination. It's almost opening the doors to let the enemy in. It knew its time was up. Yodeani, he said to the doors, I know. Yodeani becha, shesochalati decharev. I know that your end is that you are going to be destroyed. And already Zechariah ben Iddo gave such prophecy. We know that, but he's telling it you don't need to take that step. Why is she bringing this Gemara? Why am I mentioning this Gemara? Because again, we're focused right now for this few minutes on what was happening in the Beit HaMikdash, and as we're being thrown out of the Beit HaMikdash and these other. But this is a story that actually began 40 years before already, where things were already happening against to us. Comes the moment of truth. When Nebuchadnezzar came here, remember it's the Yerushalmi, so it's talking about here, meaning in Israel. When Nebuchadnezzar, the destroyer of the Beit HaMikdash, came, the great Sanhedrin went out to meet him, not necessarily greet him. Said, the time for the Beit HaMikdash has come to be destroyed. They said to Yoyachin, the king of Judah, remember, if you remember your history, at this point already, the majority of the Jews are already in Galut. The Galut, the exile of Israel before the first Beit HaMikdash, is in stages. First is a couple of parts of the north, then the rest of the northern kingdom, and then the area of Yerushalayim, Yehuda, and Binyamin. And now, so really it's just this area, and now the King Yehoiachin, who's the king of Judea, king of Judah, is told Nebuchadnezzar wants you. When they heard this, meaning when the Sanhedrin heard that the king has been summoned by Nebuchadnezzar, they saw the writing on the wall. I know that's in Daniel. They saw the writing on the wall. What did they do? What did these people in the Sanhedrin do? This is I've heard this midrash before. I've said it before, and it's still heart-wrenching. One of them took, it's in singular, took the keys of the Beit HaMikdash, went up to the rooftop of the sanctuary, the Heichal. Amar lefanav, he looked heavenwards and said, Ribono shel olam, God, in the past, we were trustworthy for you, meaning we kept Torah, we kept mitzvot. And you gave us the keys to the house. Remember, we're coming back to the same theme. We're talking about a house. Picture it as, God forbid, not your own house. It's an ayin hara, somebody's house. And they're being evicted from the house. And now they're being evicted. The house is about to be burned down. And what happens? They take the keys to the house, the ones that they had this whole time. This person says, now that we're no longer trusted, here are your keys back. Chad Amar, one Amora says, Zarakan Vod Lo Yardu. One opinion is that this person or people, as other midrashim say, it's Pirchei Kahuna, threw the keys up into the sky and they never came back down. Another opinion is that a heavenly hand came down from the heavens and took the keys. I mean, think about those words. You had the Beit HaMikdash for hundreds of years. It was the center of Jewish life. It was what supported Jewish life. It was the meeting point between you and God. It was the place of korbanot, and the Birkat Kohanim was Shem Hashem, and the Avodah Yom Kippur, and the thousands of korbanot, and the singing in Levim, and all that is coming to a crash, literally crashing and burning. These keys on this keychain, I could just use a little hamchasha. The keys are gone now. The house is burned. It's in shambles. There's no need for the key anymore. It's being given back. It's not being given back because it's yet been destroyed, though. This is before it's destroyed because they say we're not worthy any longer for that house. So it's amazing. She brought this story in. I actually remembered the story. Back in when Gush Katif was coming to an end, right after Tisha B'Av, many years ago, there was a story that a woman had gone into a bathroom. There was one of the last, I'm sure you all remember all the singing and the crying and the army pulling people out and the terrible scenes. But there was this one specific location where there were a lot of young people, young marrieds and young people singing and davening. And one woman went into the bathroom and found on the counter in the bathroom this ring. And she went back out and was looking for the woman whose ring it was. And she couldn't find her. And she couldn't find her. And she held on to it. And for many, many years. And finally, when social media became a lot more popular than it was back then, she decided to try to post and see if she could find the owner. And evidently, approximately 14 years later, she did find the owner. But what Racheli Frankel said, I thought was beautiful. She said this to her was the keys of the Beit HaMikdash. Everything's coming to a crashing burn. Woman takes off her ring, so to speak, kiviyachol, puts it down. We're not worthy of it anymore. And that's what it was like. And that's what she felt when she read this story. I thought that was absolutely magnificent how she connected it to the story of the keys. I'm going to skip Yechezkel. This is Echa Rabati, another midrash on Echa, another statement. But this is not about, this is about the Shekhinah itself. We saw from a perspective of the child looking for her mother, his mother, looking to be comforted. We saw that before. Now we're going to see it from the perspective of the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah went through 10 travels or stations. Mikruv the Kruv, he went, again, we're talking anthropomorphically, meaning giving human quality to God, of what the Shekhinah was doing as the Beit HaMikdash was coming to an end. It says that he went from one Kruv, one of the cherubs, on top of the Aron, which is in the Holy of Holies, to the second. Mikruv lemiftan, and from the Kruv to the lintel, to like the threshold, the threshold of the bayit. And he goes on, gives a list of other things. Mishahaita Shechina yotzet mi Beit HaMikdash. When the Shekhinah went out of the Beit HaMikdash, Haita chozeret, it went back in. Migafefet u'menasheket bekotlei Beit HaMikdash u'bocha. This is tears your heart apart. This is the Kiviyachol talking about Hashem going back into the Beit HaMikdash, so to speak, for one last look, touching the walls, kissing the walls, and crying. Ve'omeret, Hoy Shalom Beit Mikdashi, Hoy Shalom Beit Malchuti, Hoy Shalom Beit Yikari. This is God anthropomorphically saying goodbye to the Beit HaMikdash. Imagine a person, they're home, they're being evicted. Not moving, not willingly. They're being thrown out of their house. They raised their family. They had good times. They had bad times. They had ups and downs. Bank says it's over. You can't pay. There's no more saving. There's no more gemach to help you. It's over. We're taking your chairs and your beds and your living room and your dining room. We're throwing it out the door. And by the way, I have seen this happen myself, not to myself, but I have seen, I've witnessed it happen more than one occasion. And you look at the family, it's not just that their stuff's out in the street. That's the least of their worries right now. They've lost the grounding of their home. It's gone. And now Freddie asked the bank, so to speak, give us one more opportunity. Want to go back in, just to look at the walls, touch the walls, kiss the walls goodbye. And lahavdil, kiviyachol, HaKadosh Baruch Hu bichvodo v'atzmo, Hashem himself in his glory, goes back to the Beit HaMikdash. Woe to my house of peace. Woe to my kingdom. Woe to my house of peace. I'll explain to you why I say that about peace in a moment. And is crying, as it were. Now, wait a minute, you say, well, Hashem's the one that did this. What's he crying about, right? If I take my phone and I smash it to the ground on purpose, not because I'm angry, I decide to destroy it, what am I supposed to cry? I'm the one that decided to do it. We broke the ketubah. Going back to the beginning, we tore up that document. We asked Hashem for a divorce, as it were. Interestingly enough, the famous Gemara, which I did last year actually at Tisha B'Av in Zoom, of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, is found in Masachet Gittin, in the Gemara, in the middle of the Gemara, talking about divorce. Again, it's very symbolic. That's why the Chachamim put it in there. It's symbolic because it's our breaking the covenant. Hashem didn't break it. Hashem's perfect. I can't quote the whole pasuk now because it's Tisha B'Av, but Hashem's perfect. We're the ones that messed up. And Hashem's upset, in quotes, in this midrash, that we messed up. He wants his children home. He wants his house. He wants the shalom. What's this idea of shalom? The first Beit HaMikdash, the one that was built by Shlomo, why wasn't it built by David? After all, David wanted it. He davened for it. And Navi told him, you're going to build it. Hashem tells the Navi, go back, tell him he's not going to build it, but his son will. That makes David happy. And in some of the Tehillim, you see the way that David writes. He even writes as it's already there is a Beit HaMikdash. Beit Elokim na'alech b'ragesh. There are things there that are in his mind, there was a Beit HaMikdash, but he didn't build it. Why? Because to build it, there had to be peace. David was a man of war, which we only see, the idea that he had blood on his hands, only in Divrei Hayamim, not in Sefer Malachim. But it had to be peace. And Shlomo, the time of Shlomo was the time of peace. The symbolic act of building the Beit HaMikdash in time of peace was to engender peace and to grow peace. It's another reason why you were not allowed to use metal to axes or anything to make the Mizbeach, because the Mizbeach represented shalom and peace and metal. You couldn't even wave a piece of metal, nafta. You couldn't even wave a piece of metal over the Mizbeach because the Mizbeach represented the shalom between, not the world, between us and Hashem, coming closer, the korbanot, the karev, to come closer. And here, this is what we've caused. Here we are, Tisha B'Av afternoon. If we think it, we talk about Hashem as Avinu Malkim. Talk about right now just as Avinu. How we have disappointed Hashem. How we have caused Hashem grief. We've done so much good. We've done so much good, especially since October 7th. Unbelievable amounts of things that we have done. And yet, we know, every one of us knows there are things we need to fix. Okay? Back then, things were horrible. And thank God Hashem took it out on Eitzim and Avanim, which is part of our Nechama. He took it out on the wood and the stone. But what's the power of Yerushalayim? What is that power? Some of you may have seen today the video that the OU put out with Rav Avi Berman. He quoted a pasuk that before we made Aliyah, I brought groups to Israel. And one of the things I like to do on our very first visit to Yerushalayim was to quote this pasuk as well. It says, Yerushalayim harim saviv la. Hashem saviv lamo me'ata v'ad olam. Jerusalem is surrounded by mountains. Next time you're if you're not in Yerushalayim right now, or in your area where you're not near the area of the old city, next time you're in the area of the old city, look up. Don't take my word for it, even if you've been there 1,000 times. Look around. Yerushalayim harim saviv la. Mountains surround Jerusalem. Now, most people look at the pasuk and see that as meaning it's a sense of Hashem giving us protection from the enemy, which is one way to look at it. I looked at it a very different way, and I've always said this to the groups, and I say it here too. It's a sense of Hashem giving us this big hug, right? The mountains representing Hashem, surrounding us, giving us a big hug. Welcome to my home. Welcome to my chatzer. Welcome to my yard. You're now in my home. And before I get to this Gemara here that she made a slide of, I want to mention one other thing. And some of you who listened to the class that I taught may have heard me say this before. Years ago, I was invited on a tiyul in the old city for bar mitzvah. I don't remember whose bar mitzvah, and I don't even remember the guide's name, because this is one time I only saw this guide once. When I'm about to tell you, I heard from him. I've never heard it anywhere else, and I wish I could quote the source, but it's great. We talk about Yerushalayim as being the beating heart of the Jewish people. If you look and been, and I know there are people here who have been and have guided. You go into the old city. You have the cardio, the heart, right? And no, the Jews weren't in the cardio at that time, of course. But we refer to it as beating heart of Yerushalayim. Listen to this. This guide told us. It's just so beautiful. Imagine you have a drone with a camera hovering over Har Habayit, the Temple Mount, and it's the time of the Beit HaMikdash. We know that there was a mitzvah. There is still a mitzvah of what's called Aliyah L'Regel, that you would have to go up to Har Habayit, to go to the Temple Mount for two things: Lir'ot u'lehera'ot, to see and be seen. You bring a korban called korban iyah, and that was the mitzvah. So and when did you do it? You did it on Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, the Shalosh Regalim, the three main holidays, festivals. Nice fancy word. Now imagine you're looking at this camera feed from above. You're standing right over the Beit HaMikdash, and you see thousands and thousands and thousands of people come to the Temple Mount, and then they leave. And a few months later, thousands and thousands and thousands come, and they leave. And again, a third time, thousands come and leave. This is the way this person described it, is the idea of a heart beating, the blood flowing out, blood flowing in, blood flowing out, blood flowing in. That is such a powerful image that it really gets us to understand a little bit more about what it is we lost. We didn't lose a building. We lost the Beit HaMikdash. We didn't lose a building. If you think we just lost a building, then you've missed the entire meaning of what it means to have a Beit HaMikdash. What we've lost, and it's in one of the piyutim on Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur by Sfaradim, I don't remember by Ashkenazi, honestly, it's been years, of a list of everything we've lost, all the korbanot and all the things I mentioned before, all these different things, the korban chatat, the korban olah, the korban tamid, and the birkat kohanim in the Beit HaMikdash, and the prostration in front of the melech, everything that we lost. But there's a power to Yerushalayim. And the power to Yerushalayim is mit'achedet. It is able to unify people. But in what way? Amar Rebbe Shimon Levi, Yerushalayim ha'benuya ki ir shechuvra la'yachtav. Because the pasuk, the Yerushalayim, the rebuilt Yerushalayim, is like a city that brings together everyone as one. Ir she'osa, shehi osa kol Yisrael lechaverim. The word here, where it says chubra, also the shoresh for the word chaver. It makes people friends. What does that mean? Yerushalayim makes people friends. So there's a halachic term called to be a chaver. Now, there's a different term, not halacha, besides friend. If you have a background if you're a Yeki, a Jew with German origin, then there's a chaver. A chaver was like an officiant in the community. It was like some communities would call it in English a reverend, but it's something like a gabbai. He's been the gabbai forever. It's been a person who's a mohel, someone who's done a lot of community work, gets a title called chaver. It's bestowed upon usually by the rav of the community or the rav of the shul. I had the honor to do it twice in my career. It's a very big deal to someone who's a Yaki Jew. So that's the meaning of chaver. There's a chaver meaning friend, but a chaver in halacha is someone who is knowledgeable in halacha. Knowledgeable not just in halacha in general, but especially when it comes to trumot and maasrot, tumantara, the idea of separating tithes from food, the idea of ritual and spiritual purity and impurity. They had a certain, you could rely on them for things. If someone was a chaver, you didn't have to ask, when they brought you food, did you take trumot and maasrot? You assumed. So the Gemara tells us as follows. What does it mean? It makes all the people chaverim. What does that mean? Not just friends. It says that the power of Yerushalayim in the times of the Shalosh Regalim was so powerful, it made every Jew that was there to have a level of being considered a chaver. That they had that status for that week of being a chaver. It joined them for the word chibur. It made them friendly because now they could eat together. It made them the status of the chaver. But you think it was like at any time, what? You go home now, you wouldn't drink water in that person's house, but because you wouldn't trust their kashrut, maybe. But now we're all the same. We're under the same umbrella. And that's part of the power, says the Gemara, of this of Yerushalayim. A couple of weeks ago, I spoke at Pnei Shmuel. If you'd missed it, videos available online. A talk for, I guess you could say, for chizuk and to understand a little bit about what's going on, and quoted Ms. Kalman Shapira, the Piacenza Rebbe, and I was very glad when she had shared this. It's not that, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I might, we'll see. I'm going to read part of it and tired, and also to paraphrase something. There's a pasuk that tells us when Moshe Rabbeinu was talking to Bnei Yisrael, he's recounting the image of Ma'amad Har Sinai. Talk about the time when we're getting the Torah from Hashem. So Moshe says, you'll see it on the top line there, Anochi Omed Ben Hashem u'Beinechem. What was my job? My job was I stood there on the mountain between you and God, and it was to act as a middleman. Right? We know that Midrash elsewhere tells us that Hashem said the first couple of the Aseret HaDibrot, and people died, they keep brought back to life, and Torah itself says the Bnei Yisrael tell Moshe that we can't do this, we need you to say it. So that's the pasuk. Anochi omed ben Hashem u'beinechem. I stood before you, or I stand before you and God. So the Piacenza quotes the Baal Shem Tov on this pasuk. Look, starting right over here, it says Shah Anochi. He gives it, the Baal Shem Tov gives it an unbelievable insight. Shah Anochiyut shemargish adam b'kirbo. The ego that a person feels in himself, doeg v'rodef rak tzorchei atzmo. Only the person's ego is there to worry about and chase after his own personal needs. Zehu omed umafsik ben Hashem u'beinechem. Our ego stands between us and God. Ad kan l'shono hakadosh. The Piacenza says this is the quote of the Baal Shem Tov. So first, let's understand, what does the Baal Shem Tov say? He takes a pasuk that's very benign, and most people understand it to mean that Moshe Rabbeinu was the go-between, and takes the word anochi. The word anochiyut in English is ego. Says that what stands between Hashem and us are anochiyut. Our ego gets in the way. That's what the Baal Shem Tov says. And now, here's what he says. How do we break? We need ego. By the way, you have to have an ego. If you don't, this is a problem. But when we talk about being egotistical, that's a different story. We have the id, ego, and the est, I think it was. It's been a long time since Psych 101. Anyway, so the ego is a purposeful thing. We need it, just like in Tanya, we talk about the nefesh habahamit, the animalistic soul. We need it because otherwise we would have problems. In any case, so he says, the Piacenza says that to break that anochiyut, that bond, that wall between us, that ego that distances us from Hashem, is only broken by loving our fellow Jew. Not when a person stands all up by themselves. That's the remez when now he takes the two words, anochi omed, I stand. Shanochi omed latzmo. When I stand all by myself, azeu ben Hashem u'benechem. That comes between you and God. When it's only about you, and you don't care about Klal Yisrael, you don't care about Am Yisrael, you don't care about your fellow Jew, that is a wall between you and God. That when a person thinks only about himself, or thinks about himself, and to a point where sometimes he gets to where he's just consumed only by only worrying about himself. Zoti min hitchazkut pnimit. So on one side, that is a form of self-preservation. I mean, if I don't think about my need to eat, to sleep, to drink, to make money, whatever it might be, I can be in big trouble. Because what happens? We see everybody else. Look around. Everyone's taking care of themselves. So he too wants to stand, letting me to stand on his soul. He wants to take care of himself. And the neshama wants to take care of itself. To the point where our ego gets, again, you need the ego, but sometimes for some people that ego gets so huge, and I only think about me, then it's only me. It's only me and nothing else. Nothing else exists. How do we get rid of that? We have to tamp it down. How do we get rid of it? It's not just bad enough that I distance myself from my fellow man. I distance myself from Hashem. And that's the exact opposite of what we want to try to accomplish on Tisha B'Av, especially. How do I do it? Reach out to your fellow Jew. Feel for your fellow Jew. This is the Avtah L'Reacha Kamocha, bringing it to life, taking action. Umikol shekain, בענייני עבודה, עבודת הלב ומחשבה, מחשבה, המוח והלב וכולי. וממילא כל אחד מהם לא יראה את עצמו. In other words, not just lip service. Help somebody out, they're feeling down. Help somebody out if they just need an ear. So help somebody out in their spiritual life, in their physical life. Be there. Just reach out. It's not all, I'm not saying to any one of you, I'm saying to the world. It's not about you. It's about us. That's why Shemona Esrei. Everything's in the plural. That's why we always talk about everyone else's needs along with our needs. We always try to include it into everybody else's needs. So his goal is to remove the ego completely. I don't think that's something that everyone would agree with. I personally don't, because you do need some form of an ego. But the negative perspective of the ego, that you need to uproot. And you do that, he said, by reaching out, helping other people, being there for other people. I'm not going to read this Mishnah now because we're going to run out of time. But let me just tell you B'Gadol what this Mishnah talks about, because it's still also something very apropos for Tisha B'Av. It basically says that in times of tzara, when things are going bad, you have no right, for B'nai Yisrael, you have no right to be disconnected from it. You have no right whatsoever to just sit on the side if it doesn't touch you. Let's put this into terms of recent history, recent events. I am fairly certain that after October 7th, let's say October 8th, October 9th, there wasn't a single person in the land of Israel. I'm talking about Israel right now, not to discredit Chutz La'aretz right now. I'm talking Israel, I'm talking about our home right now, that didn't have some feeling of brokenness, the sadness. I don't think there were too many people, I would hope, that was sitting inside like, not my problem. As time has gone since October 7th, and we, in some circles, have reverted back to some of the ways we've had before with the infighting, and not to point fingers at anybody, because it's throughout every single sector right now, unfortunately, but thank God, not like it was before October 7th. There are people like, look, right now, it's the problem of the North. It's the problem in the South. There's a big deal today of two rockets that were shot towards Tel Aviv. I'd say big deal. Like they're getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds up north. Okay, but so I say big deal. What? It's not my problem? It is. Of course it is. Just because they're not going to take action until maybe something happens big in Tel Aviv, does it mean it's not my problem? Of course not. I need to feel that also. I need to have some compassion for my fellow Jew, no matter who he is. I don't care if the person's religious, not religious, if he's an apikoros. There's a Russia person who absolutely purposefully goes out of his way to deny the existence of God. There is no such, that's a different story. But we're talking about Kol Yisrael Yeshlam Chelek Haba and Vamech Kulam Tzadikim, Yeshua, etc. We believe that we're all Tzadikim. You are all Tzadikim. We love our fellow Jew. That's the antidote. We started off by what was one of the things that brought down the Beit HaMikdash the second time was the Sinat Chinam. There are people who say that the opposite is not Havat Chinam, because Havat Chinam means I don't have any, I'm loving you, Stam, because I love you. There has to be a reason. What's the reason? You're a fellow Jew. You're part of me. This is another Gemara I'm not going to get into because it's also the same idea of how you have to feel for someone else's joy, not just their sadness. It's important to go to a wedding, to be participant in the wedding itself. And the end here, the Kavanot Ta'ari, is something we talked about in our Tefillah class a number of months ago. It's in some of your Sidurim. If you don't have it, you want, I'm happy to send you. There's a paragraph that many people say, myself included, that you start your day off by saying you accept upon yourself the mitzvah of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And it gives us an extra leg up, says the Ari, and it's also brought in the Mishnah Berurah, it's brought in Maharal, or Marsha, I forgot, that it gives us an opening in Shamayim for our tefillot to be more accepted when we accept upon ourselves. Hashem says, you want me to be with you, you want me to connect to you? Connect with your friends. When we accept the Haftalah Re'acha Kamocha, when we do that, when we shrink our ego, when we grow our ahava for our fellow Jew, when we realize that we're in this all together, when we think about the sadness that we had and the joy that we, Bezrat Hashem, will have very soon, and we say, let us, our eyes see the return of the Shekhinah to the Tzion, to Yerushalayim, now we can get a little bit better picture. What do you mean to return? What does that mean that we should see? The same Shekhinah that these Midrashim describe, of coming in and crying and looking for their mother and kissing his mother and kissing goodbye to the walls and kissing goodbye to everything there. That's the Shekhinah that we want to be able to witness, see, come back. Amen. An easy fast for the rest of the time. This is the last year I'll be giving a shiur on Zoom on Tisha B'Av. Next time, Bezrat Hashem will be in person, so hopefully in some stadium. And I'm going to invite Mashiach to join us. He'll probably be very busy, but if not, it'll be an honor to have Mashiach with us. Again, just as a reminder for those of you fasting, the fast in Malei Adumim is over at 7:49. There is no Havdalah. It was asked that there is no Havdalah. That's only when it comes out with say Shabbat. And again, we should get together for a lot of good things and celebrate lots of smachot coming up, Bezrat Hashem. Be well, everybody. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.